Okay, I'm ready.
Welcome everybody to another QB Power Hour. Today's topic is QuickBooks Nonprofit, and we have a special guest, Gregg Bossen, on with us today. So glad to have him with us. Real quickly, a little bit about the QB Power Hour. As you know, this is a webinar series. We usually go every other week, but lately we've had so much great content that we've been doing them weekly. Our next webinar is on engagement letters and client onboarding. We usually cover tips, tricks, and advanced insights covering about half QuickBooks Desktop and half QuickBooks Online, but we also like to bring in special guests from third-party apps to talk about some third-party apps like MethodDonor today, or practice management topics like value pricing, and other small business and accounting-related news and things like that. So first of all, we're talking a little bit about the QB Power Hour, and Hector and I will introduce ourselves. We'll talk about the CPE process and make sure everybody knows what's going on with that. A few announcements and updates, and then today our learning objectives. Gregg Bossen is going to be sharing some tips and tricks to use nonprofit in QuickBooks, and he's also going to demonstrate the MethodDonor app for QuickBooks. So we've got a great session with some good stuff for you today. If you're not aware, I'm Michele Wong. I'm a CPA and the owner of Long for Success in the Kansas City, Missouri area. Authored numerous Intuit Academy courses, co-authored the advanced certifications and 5 different books. So check those out if you want. Love to have you join us in the LinkedIn group as well as the Facebook group. It's a great resource to continue the discussion and ask questions. Hector, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi everybody, my name is Hector Garcia. I'm a CPA. I work and live in Miami, Florida. I'm a partner at QuickBook Keeping, which was named Top 20 Intuit's Firm of the Future in the contest, which is a lot of fun. And we focus on training down here, so naturally we're doing webinars about QuickBooks training as well. I'm very glad to be here and excited about our special guest. Gregg is one of my favorite trainers in all the conferences that I go to. I end up going to all his trainings, and I see the same thing over and over, but mostly because he's just such a great speaker, and he is the man when it comes to nonprofit. I mean, I don't think there's anybody else in the entire industry that knows QuickBooks Nonprofit as much as he does, so I'm very excited and starstruck to have him.
I would agree with that. And I know I've worked with Gregg for many years, too, as part of the Intuit Trader Writer Network, and we're very honored to have Gregg joining us today. We do want to cover quickly our sponsors and guest speakers. The primary sponsors are Hector and I and our businesses, and we also bring in some other vetted sponsors, some third-party developers or other speakers, and we're always focused on useful and relevant products and services for QuickBooks users. We are not officially sponsored or associated with Intuit, although from time to time we do have Intuit as a guest speaker to cover announcements and things like that. Hector, do you want to go ahead and talk about the CPE process?
So CPE process is simple. You must be logged in for at least 50 minutes. We're going to give you a CPE password, a keyword in the middle of the webinar at some point, and then towards the end we're going to ask it and you have to answer it correctly. In order to get the CPE certificate, you must be in the live webinar. The recordings don't count, although we record all these, and within 3 weeks of the webinar we should send them out. I'd like to say that as of today we're 100% updated with CPE certificates, so everybody should have all their CPE certificates from past webinars. If you didn't get them, email me, Hector at qbkaccounting.com or qbpowerhour@gmail.com, and I'll take a look into that.
Okay, and a few of the upcoming events that we have, we want to make sure that you all are aware of the QuickBooks Online Certification Prep Training. There's preparation for the certification both online and in live cities coming to you. It's the road show that we're doing. And so there's various cities and dates that you can check out, or if you can't attend one of those cities or it's not in a city near you, you can always do the online webinars. Remember, Hector and I are coming to Long Island, New York, and Syracuse at the end of October, so we'd love to have you join us for that, as well as QuickBooks Connect in San Jose, California. If you haven't signed up for that yet, I highly encourage you to do that. That is the Don't Miss conference. You really want to be there. Another great conference coming up in November is SleaterCon in Las Vegas, and Hector and I are going to be doing QB Power Hour live from Vegas. We'd love to have you join us for that. So check out some of those and sign up for those that you can attend. And I'm going to go ahead and say a little something about Hector, or about Gregg, and then I think Hector might as well. But Gregg Bossen will also ask you to introduce yourself. But Gregg is an amazing person. Like Hector said, he knows nonprofits like nobody else. Plus, he knows the construction industry really well. I know I've been presenting with Gregg starting back, like in 2007 Roadshow, I think, and have really enjoyed working with Gregg over the years. He is an amazing speaker as well as knows QuickBooks inside and out, so we're very privileged to have him with us today. Gregg, do you want to go ahead and say anything, or Hector?
Well, Hector, I think he's already talked.
No.
Yeah, I think he already talked about how great I am. I don't think I need any more of that, which I think is awesome anyway. I really do appreciate it. That's awesome. Thank you so much. Let me minimize this thing here.
We are seeing your screen now, Gregg, so I'm going to go ahead and let you.
That's good. And what I'll do is I'll just add a little bit. First of all, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm just as starstruck to be able to be on something like this. But as you are of having me, I guess. And just to let you know, so I do kind of two things. I'm a CPA with an accounting practice in Atlanta. I've been in practice for about 25 years. And then I own QuickBooks Made Easy, which the goal of QuickBooks Made Easy is to train people on how to use QuickBooks that are in specific industries. So we have trainings, and we actually have 3 ways that we kind of train people, and we train accountants, CPAs, as well as end users. We have 3 ways that we train people, and we, as Michele said, I concentrate in 2 industries, nonprofits and construction contractors. So with nonprofits, we have 3 things that we do. We have DVD training products, and if you look at the little box there at the bottom of the slide, those are the 2 training have together. They form a set, and it's about 16 hours of learning. It's DVDs that come with handbooks. Also, we have full year of phone tech support. And I have CPAs that call me that have tech support agreements. And then we teach seminars live around the country. So we go to about 22 cities live this year, I think we're going to. So we're towards the end of our season here. But if you're in any of these cities and you decide that I'm actually kind of an interesting person and you want to see me teach, it's about $150 for the day. It's going to be an all-day seminar in these cities just for nonprofits. And we'll feed you breakfast and lunch. It's from 9 to 4:30, and you get 8 hours of CPE. So in 2016, we may be coming to where you are. So I think that's kind of what the dealio is. So now, well, one more thing before I go any further. David, are you on the line? I wanted to tell them. Okay, so David Webb, he's kind of my colleague here, and the operations manager at QuickBooks Made Easy, and I'm sure if any of you have seen me live, you've probably met him also. He's just out of prison, which we're happy about. No, I'm just kidding. So anyway, he'll be there to answer questions, and also he'll read me some questions live. So we like to hear from you guys. He'll be able to see the chat, so please use the chat to ask questions, and we'll be answering questions throughout the webinar here. So if I wanted to teach you all about nonprofits, we really have to teach all of these topics that you're looking at on this slide. I mean, and there's a ton of them, right? And so it would take me probably 12 hours to teach all this. And so actually, these are the topics that are in the training products that we have, which actually we're going to offer them to you at a pretty fat discount at the end of this webinar. But all kinds of things about how to set up, enter transactions, how to auto-allocate expenses to programs, how to spread expenses to programs, how to track volunteers, track special events, enter in kind. It's kind of like a soup to nuts thing. Everything you need to know if you have a client that's a nonprofit, okay, from soup to nuts. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to teach 5 of these topics. A couple of them are, first one here, and actually I've highlighted them here, but then I have them kind of separated so it's easier to read. So we're going to look at what the best way is for a nonprofit to set up their chart of accounts, and my goal is to make the chart of accounts easy for us to translate it into a 990 or an audit, okay? We're going to look at how nonprofits need to use classes to track their programs. We're going to talk about how to track special fundraising events in QuickBooks. And again, there's a bunch of topics: in-kind contributions, tracking volunteers, tracking capital campaigns, but I just picked one here that I think a lot of people need. Then we're going to look at how to enter donations and grants, what the best way of doing that is in QuickBooks. And from there, we're going to talk about how to use MethodDonor, which is actually an outside of QuickBooks database. It syncs with QuickBooks. It's awesome. So, and we'll talk about that at the end. So that's basically how we're going to run today. But before we go any further, I do have a little poll. So Hector or Michele, can you go ahead and run that poll? It's kind of a fun little poll. I want to see who's actually listening. All right. So you launched it? Okay.
Yes, they're doing a poll now.
Okay, great. So I want to know what time you woke up this morning. If it's before 5 a.m., I think you're out of your mind, or maybe you live on a farm, or maybe you couldn't sleep. 5 to 7, some people get up that early. 7 to 9, that's my category. After 9, good for you. And then my personal favorite, I'm actually still sleeping. So we'll see. So what do we got here? This way I can see who's actually listening to me, and you're not just like putting this on in the background. I'm an extremely interesting person. You really need to listen, supposedly. What do we got? Is that, you guys, I can't even read the poll, so I need to see.
Okay. There we go. Hector just closed it for you.
All right. What do we got? Oh, can I share that?
15% was before 5 a.m., 63% 5 to 7, and then 20% 7 to 9, and we have 1% who said they're actually still sleeping, so hold it down.
Of course, of course. All right, cool. Well, let's get rolling. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go right into QuickBooks, and we're going to talk about the appropriate way to set up chart of accounts. Now, here's my overarching theme, guys, and I know you're going to appreciate this. Your clients that are nonprofits, what they try and do is they try and set up an account in the chart of accounts list for absolutely everything that they might need to track, all right? Somebody runs into the room and says, I need to know how much a program costs. So they run and they create an account for it. Somebody says, I need to find out something about a particular item that we're selling. They create an account for it. So you end up with 50 million accounts, which means it's a nightmare for us, and it's also a nightmare for the board, because when you print out the P&L, it's 15 pages long because there's so many accounts and the board can't read it. So what my theme is when I teach nonprofits is we want to save just the most important things that the board needs to see and that we accountants need to see for the chart of accounts. And all the rest of the stuff that nonprofits need to track, which is a lot, we're going to track that somewhere else. Okay? So that's kind of what the theme is. So the best way to show you the right way to set up your account list is to show you the wrong way. So the balance sheet people don't screw up too much, but nonprofits go crazy with the income and expense accounts. So here's the wrong way of doing this. And in case you're not listening to me and you're just looking, I better go ahead and type wrong way. Okay? This is the wrong way of doing this. Okay? Restricted grants. Many of us have clients that have restricted grants, and they'll set up an income account for that. That is useless, all right? That is not the place to track restricted grants, all right? So we don't want to do that. Also, people like to set up an income account for every single grantor. Then you end up with a bunch of different income accounts. Both the restricted grants and the individual grantors, we can track that using the customer list, so do not set up income accounts for that, all right? When it comes to income accounts, every single nonprofit on the face of the planet should have one income account for individual contributions, one for corporate grants, one for foundation, and one for government grants. Why? Because this is how we have to report it on the 990. This is how we report it on an audited financial statement, and this is an excellent way for the board to see where their money is coming from, okay? Oh, we need to get more money from corporations. We don't have enough from them. So those 4 accounts every single nonprofit in the world should have, okay? Now, these 4 accounts nonprofits called unearned revenue because the money was kind of given or granted to them, Okay? Then we have nonprofits, and most nonprofits do some services in exchange for dollars. That's called earned revenue. And I've got just a few income accounts here for major categories. I have a generic one called program fees. I have one for membership dues. If you have a client that's a school, you have one for tuitions. Notice how I only have one for membership dues. Many organizations that have member dues, they have different levels of membership. You know, the affiliate member and the retired member and the regular member and the blah, blah, blah member. And they set up income accounts for all those. We're going to use another list for that. The list is going to be the item list, okay? Some people say, oh, let's use sub-accounts. No, that ends up with a bunch of accounts, makes key punching difficult. I don't want to do that. We're going to use another list for it, okay? So, all right. So then we've got just a couple of general ones, miscellaneous income and interest. Okay. Now, so that's basically the income accounts. You just want to have a few major categories. Do not use it to track restricted grants. Don't have one for each grantor. Okay. Now, people screw that up, but not near as much as they screw up the expense accounts. When it comes to expenses, all right, now, regular businesses that aren't nonprofits, just regular businesses, they need to track their expenses mainly by the natural category, and that's usually the only thing that regular businesses need to worry about. Salaries, health insurance, rent, postage, just a natural way of thinking about an expense, and nonprofits need to worry about that too. But what you will find, there is a second thing that nonprofits need to track when it comes to expenses. They have to put their expenses in one of three buckets. So guys, go ahead and chat me up. Tell David, what are the three buckets that you have to put your expenses in for reporting purposes if you're a nonprofit? Somebody chat David. And funders want to know that most of your money goes to one of the buckets and not the other two. What are they? David, go ahead and tell me.
I see fundraising, admin, program.
Boom. That's program, fundraising, and admin. So we have to basically be able to tell QuickBooks every time we enter an expense, whether it goes to program, admin, or fundraising. And again, nonprofits will use expense accounts for it, which makes things confusing. These are our three programs. Synergy Now is an organization all about getting the country onto forms of energy that are environmentally friendly in the United States. And they have three programs. They have a guidance center, a conference, and an aware campaign. Do not set these up as expense accounts, okay? Do not set up an expense account called fundraising expenses. Wrong. Okay? We want to have the natural category, salaries, health insurance, rent, and we're going to use, I'm sure a lot of you already know this, the class list to track our programs that have been in fundraising. All right? So a good rule of thumb, guys, listen to this. This is really cool. I learned this from somebody at a seminar. If I look at a chart of accounts list for a nonprofit and look at their expenses, I should have no clue what the organization does. The expense account should be generic, okay, because they certainly are generic. We all fill out the same 990. And the audit needs to be readable by people that don't understand anything about the organization. So you got to use the natural category of expenses, okay? So that leaves classes to track our program. So I'm going to go over to a different data file. And while I'm doing this, David, does anybody have any question for me so far?
Yeah, I had a question from... if I could find it in the list. Someone asked if, what about churches?
Yes, so that is a really good point. Churches, they don't have to fill out a 990 and they don't have to fill out an audit, so there's a separate setup for churches. So let me finish this and then I'll go back and I'll show the churches. So except for churches, other nonprofits, you're going to use classes, all right? So here we are with classes. Now, every nonprofit, except for a church, is going to have at least three classes. One for fundraising, one for admin, and then one for, if they only have one program, then they'll just have three classes. The third one will be their program. We have three programs here, so we have a total of 5 classes. So the benefit of this, well, first of all, if you use classes, first thing, every time you enter an expense, yeah, you got to point it to an expense account, and you also got to point it to a class. And by the way, you can break an expense out between different classes, and I actually have a way to get QuickBooks to automatically allocate between classes based on percentages. If I have time, I'll teach it today. If it's not, it's in the training product. But the benefit of doing this is now, as long as you point every transaction to a class, you can do a P&L by class. And look at how beautiful this report is. Okay, what it does is it gives a column for every single class, the rows of the accounts, and what's so neat about this, let me move this, all right, okay. What's so neat about this is that if you go to the bottom, you can see total expenses for each program versus admin versus fundraising versus the total. And that's what nonprofits care about. So what I'm going to do here is actually I'm going to show you something that's really cool. In the class list, I'm going to create another class called Program. I get into the meat of things here, guys. I hope you appreciate it. Programs, and then under Programs, I'm going to make these subclasses by clicking to the diamond, clicking on the diamond and moving it to the right, and now there's and the benefit of doing that is now we have all our programs, but then we have a total programs column. So when I go over here, I can see, let me just go down a little bit more. So we see here that total programs is $178,000. Expenses for admin is $55,000. Fundraising is $20,000. So we can see not only the dollars, but this is another thing I like to do. If I click on Customize, and click on percentage of row, then I can actually see what percentage of expenses for each one of those classes is part of the total. What's the total percentage? So for total programs, 70% of my expenses go to program, 22 go to admin, 8.1 go to fundraising. Now, how cool is this? Okay, if I think United Way, you have to have 75% in order to be able to get money from United Way. Now, this is not something you would give to the board, but it is what we need, certainly. Let me go ahead and get rid of the percentage of row, and it is certainly what we need to do the 990 and do the tax return. Now, that does mean that you'll need to be allocating expenses, and it's very important that they allocate expenses for salaries between the different programs. And a lot of us, they don't do that, and we're stuck doing it at the end of the year. In the products, I show them how they can do it automatically through the year, and it's no extra work. There's an auto-allocate thing that you can use to make that happen. And it's not just in the nonprofit edition. You can do it in the other versions of QuickBooks as well. It's really very cool. So the other thing that's really neat about this is when it comes to income, not only are we going to point expenses to the different classes, but QuickBooks wants you to point your income to different classes. So that's awesome. I don't really need it to do the audit, but the client it's really helpful for, because what I'm going to do is all the money that's related to the Guidance Center, I'll point it to that class. And what that gives me the ability to see is if I've made or lost money on a program. In other words, does the Guidance Center pay for itself? All the grants and the fees that were earmarked for the Guidance Center, I put to the Guidance Center. So now I can see that the Guidance Center has lost $14,000, whereas the Synergy Conference made $6,700. This is awesome. The Guidance Center, you can give this to a development director, and they're going to be able to say, okay, we need about $15,000 more, and the program will pay for itself. So can we please, you go to a funder and you ask them. Okay, so that's what the deal is with classes. It's a beautiful thing. You definitely want to use it. Now, nonprofits that are that have to fill out a 990, they love this thing. Churches are not filling out 990s typically, and they also typically don't get audits. The other thing about churches is that whereas regular nonprofits, the board doesn't really need to see this stuff on a P&L compared to budget. They don't really think of the different programs. Churches absolutely do. So since churches don't necessarily need, program, admin, fundraising, they don't need all that stuff. And conversely, churches do want to see on the P&L compared to budget their committees. They don't have programs, they have committees or ministries. I've got another data file here that's a church, and I'll just show you how I have it set up there. But while I'm doing that, does anybody have any more questions?
Yes, we had a few questions about the online edition, as if this would work with the online edition with the
Yes.
setup.
Okay. Now I'm glad you said this. Now, anybody who is using any version of QuickBooks will be able to get that P&L by class, including the online edition, folks. The only thing about the online edition is that when you have the online edition, you have 3 different choices. I think it's called Simple, Start, and then Essentials, and then Plus. Only Plus has the class feature. So any of your clients that want to use the online edition, they have to have Plus, all right? And that because that has the class feature so that they can use it for programs, and it also is the only product in online that has the budgeting feature. So nonprofits have to have Plus. End of story.
Greg, can I add one more?
Sure.
Yeah, can I add one more comment about QBO? If your nonprofit organization needs more than one accounts receivable account, then QBO is not the answer for you, because right now you can only use one AR account. So just to clarify that as well. Yeah,
that's a point with there's a lot of things that the online edition that doesn't necessarily have that the desktop does. But yeah, the accounts receivable is certainly one of them. Thank you for that. So let's look at a P&L. What I've done, actually, I'll just look at the chart of accounts for the church. And if it's a church, what I've done is I've used accounts for each one of the committees, and I've made them bold, and then the sub-accounts are going to be the individual accounts within it. So then if I go to a P&L, let's see, a standard P&L, and I'll make it this fiscal year. There we go. So this is more what they like to see, usually compared to a budget. And if I collapse it, then it looks like that, which is kind of cool. All right. So that's really it for the setup. One thing I want to cover next is special fundraising events. So let me go ahead and do that now. So I'm going to go over to a different data file. Now this is going to blow your mind, okay? This is going to freak you out. So if you've not been listening, you need to listen up. So this is pretty cool. I'm going to go to a different data file. So a special fundraising event, how do you track that in QuickBooks? Okay, there's not like a special button for it. So even if you have the nonprofit edition, there's not a special button for it. So what I've done
Greg,
is yep.
Sorry, Greg. If you don't mind, while you make that switch, can you put up a CPE keyword slide or something so we can have the? It's about halfway through, so we need to get the CPE keyword.
Sure. Let me go ahead and I'll get back to the slides here.
So,
and
thank you. While you're explaining what you were explaining.
There it is. Do you say it or do you just show it?
Go ahead and say it a couple of times.
Okay.
Yeah.
Platypus. Platypus. That's so weird. David came up with that.
Have you ever seen a platypus? Have you ever really seen a platypus?
Yeah, you know, I have 5 pet platypuses in my house. I do, actually. No, I've never seen a platypus. I don't even think they really exist. All right, let's move on. Enough of that. So when it comes to special fundraising events, what a lot of people do, which is wrong, is they decide that they want to use classes for it. Because they think, you know, the big thing about a special fundraising event is that I'm going to want to see I want to see a P&L for it. So they do a P&L for the special fundraising event. They do a class for the special fundraising event. But then what happens is the only way to really see it is to run a P&L by class. And if you run a P&L by class, you'll be able to see whatever the net is of the special fundraising event is by looking at the P&L by class, but that's not what boards want to see. Boards want to see just one thing. They don't want all those columns. That's going to freak them out. So they just want a total with a budget. Well, then you lose the specifics. I know I went through that fast, but it's the wrong way of doing it anyway. If you will lose the ability to see the net of a special fundraising event if you've used a class for it, unless you do a P&L by class. So that's not a good answer. So what I want to do, even though I don't like using accounts when I can help it, let me tell you something. One thing that the board always wants to know about is how you did on a special fundraising event. They are freaked out about that, okay? Maybe the board member never even went to a meeting all year long, but they went to that dinner, and when they get the email with the P&L compared to budget, they want to know how you did on the special event. So I'm going to tell you to use accounts to track special fundraising events. You're going to have a separate set of accounts for each event, and here's what it looks like. All right. I've got one account at the top here. It's called Special Event Annual Gala, Net. All right? Now, I'm never going to use that account. It's just a header. I'm not going to use it in transactions. Then underneath it, I've got Gala Revenue. This is a dinner that we have. That's what most of our clients have. They have an annual dinner. Most people have that as a special event. I'm never going to use Gala Revenue. Then I have another one called Gala Costs. I'm never going to point anything to that either. So those three accounts are just kind of there as headers. What was that? I guess it's over. I think that's David blowing his nose. All right, so then we've got under revenue, we've got are y'all having fun yet? Text David if you're having fun. Say yes. All right, so under revenue, we got three accounts for the actual event: Gala tickets, Gala sponsorships, Gala auction, and then under costs, we have all of those as well: equipment rental, banquet fee, travel. What's weird about this? Text David and tell him what's weird about this. What freaks you out about this method of setting it up? Let's hear it, guys. What's weird about using this method?
Too many accounts. All are income accounts.
There you go. All are income accounts. Even the expense accounts are income accounts, and this is what freaks people out. What most people do is they put the income accounts up at the top for a special fundraising event, and then they put the expenses down at the bottom. Well, then you can't get a net. So what I do is I say, you know what, make even the expense accounts income type. That way, it'll all be netted together, and whenever they write a check, there it is again. Whenever they write a check to an income account, it's going to automatically make it minus. So by using this setup, let's take a look and see what it looks like on the computer screen in a report. We'll do a P&L standard. So here it is. It's kind of like its own little mini P&L within the big P&L, all right? And all of the money that you entered as income is up there as a positive. All of the checks that you wrote and bills that you paid that went to these income accounts, QuickBooks automatically makes them negative, okay? Because whenever you write a check to an income account, it makes it negative. So it nets it so we can see how we did on the event. Now what I would do is I would collapse the accounts for the board. So then you've got how much did you make in contributions, corporate grants, foundations. What did you net on the special event? That's the way that board members think of it. They want to know what the net was. They don't care about the gross. They want to know the net of the event. The other thing is, guys, isn't this beautiful? Isn't this what we would want? This is what we have to do for the 990. We have to report it in the front with Schedule G in the back that has the actual P&L for the special event, and this is how we have to do it on an audit, where you just show it net, and then in the back there's a footnote. Okay? The other thing is if they are doing it where they're putting the fundraising expenses down here, that's not the appropriate format for reporting purposes. We got to do journal entries to get it back up here. So this is the way to handle special fundraising events. I think it's awesome and I love it. Anybody got questions before we move on?
Yeah, I mean, we have quite a few.
Okay.
Did somebody said, and they're rolling in as I'm trying to answer, ask them. Okay, so somebody said, I use the general ledger by class and customize it to get this information.
So he does a class report, and he probably customizes it so he can get a P&L by class. But the problem is that if the expenses are down here and the income's up here, you got to have a second report to show the board, and then somebody's got to do a journal entry to move it up here at the end. So I don't like that answer.
Okay. I kind of have a long one. It says, but following the 990, many costs may not be applied to direct special event costs, advertising, any pre-event costs. The board still wants to know, and sponsorships and contributions are not gala revenue. The cost of the tickets must include contribution over the FMV value. We add the special event's name as a sub of a fundraising class code. Most events really are not special, so there are usually not many. Your method would enable the auditor and tax account to reclass them easily, so it depends on your in-house audience or desire to match the audit.
Well, my suggestion is for events that are really special fundraising events. You're right. There's a number of people that claim that it's a special fundraising event when really it's not. So I'm referring to events that are actually special fundraising events. The rest of the stuff, I feel like we need to talk about that later. I need to understand a little bit more about where that person's coming from. I know that part of the ticket sale is donation and part of it isn't. The board still wants to see it all lumped. And I use items when I'm entering the income to split that out. I'm more interested in getting what I need to report on the audit and what the board wants to see. If we got to put something on a different line on a 990, that's not necessarily a big deal to do at the end of the year. So, and we take, is there one more?
I have one for you. I had a quick one, if that's okay.
No, it's not okay. You're not allowed to speak.
Sorry, David. Sorry, David. I didn't want to step on your toes, but I want to know the answer to this one, too. Why would you use this method instead of using job costing?
Well, okay. So the reason why I'm not using jobs is because the board needs to see this. The whole goal of my training is to give the board something that they can use at the end of the year. So by doing this, and this is actually the report that you would give to the board, they'll be able to see the report will look like this, which is exactly what I want the board to get. This is what they like seeing. If I were to use job costing, again, I'm going to need to have a separate report that I give them to see what the net is of the event. So that's why I like to use accounts for it. Now, the other reason why I don't use job costing is because I'm saving the job cost field, and I should really tell you guys this. So basically, anytime you enter an expense, there are actually three things that you're going to want to track. One is the natural category, and I'm using the account field for that, like postage and delivery. A second one is the class, which is very important, program, admin, fundraising. And then if it's paid for out of a grant, I use the customer job field for that. So if you get a grant that's used to pay for the special event, I'm going to want to put the grant here. So that's why I like to save it for the accounts. Actually, this would be Gala. I'd use Gala over here. Here we go, Gala postage. So that's why I don't use the customer job for it. A, because I'm saving it for something else, which is tracking restricted grants, and B, so that the board members can see it easily on their report without having to get another report. So
awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so let's move on. I want to talk about how to enter income now, so I'm going to change to a different data file here. And while I'm doing that, actually, I should probably pop the slide up. But, yeah, let me go ahead and pop that slide up. I have a slide on it. Oh, you're not supposed to see that anymore. Let's see. Here it is. All right. So how do you enter income? And the reason why I put this in here, guys, is because there's a real issue with entering income, how to enter it correctly if you are a nonprofit organization. So let me just tell you my theory, and you can think about this and use it when you're talking to your clients. And you can use this. I would encourage you to download these slides afterwards, download the deck so that you have this. I also have another slide with some resources on it where you can get more information later. But anyway, so there's kind of three ways of entering income. One of them is called the lump by category method, and one of them is called the individual method. We'll get to MethodDonor in a minute. So you pick which method you want, lump by category or individual, depending upon whether the client has an outside of QuickBooks database and likes it. So if the client has an outside of QuickBooks database and likes it, like Salesforce, Donor Perfect, GiftWorks, whatever it is, then they're entering the donations there individually. No need to enter them individually in QuickBooks over again. Okay. Now, some of these out of QuickBooks databases claim to import into QuickBooks. It's been my experience that most of them do not import very well or at all. If they do import, it's by journal entry. They don't import the class, which is vitally important for nonprofits. So very few people actually use the import. But they're, Salesforce, whatever, okay? So, but if they're using an outside of QuickBooks database and they like it and they're not importing, then you want to use the lump by category method, and in this method, you're basically entering the donation in the make deposit window lumped by account and class. So let me go into QuickBooks here, and I'll just show you what I'm talking about. Let me see, I got to go back. I should probably sing at this point. There should never be any silence during a webinar. Never. Which is good. I talk a lot. All right. I've got a little bit of a cold right now, and just so you know, my uvula is a little swollen. If you need to look that up, please do so. All right. So
he wants cards and gifts and flowers.
I do want, if anybody has ever had a swollen uvula, please chat David, and we'll see if anybody actually has ever had that. But all right. So to enter income using the lump by category method, you're going to go to the record deposit window. You pick your bank account. This is not a big deal. The point is you're lumping by income account, okay? So we've got membership dues. We've got a bunch of checks. We're not entering them individually. We're just lumping them. And then we go on to the next income lump, corporate grants. We got a grant, $10,000. And then finally, we have individual contributions, and we had 4 of those that are totaling, I don't know, $400. So we're lumping them by income account. We also need to lump them by class, all right? So here's the deal. In order to get a report that will let you know how well you're doing on an individual program, you only want to point income to a program if it relates to it. Okay, so the membership dues will say are for the Guidance Center program, and the corporate grants will say are for the Synergy Conference. What do we do with unrestricted contributions? We don't want to point them to a program. So where do you think we would put unrestricted contributions? Can you guys guess? And I'm going to slow up using the mouse here. I've been using the mouse too quickly. There's probably a time delay, so I'm going to slow up here for the last little bit.
I'm getting fundraising as the answer to your question.
Exactly. Fundraising. That's correct. Okay? So that's the lump by category method. Now, this isn't ideal because if somebody calls you and says, my check didn't clear, you can look in the other database, Salesforce, and see that you got it. But you go back into QuickBooks and we don't have it listed separately here. So some of your clients will be like, well, I'll just enter it over again here. Well, then you're double working. So that's not really a great idea. What you really want, if you do have an outside of QuickBooks database, is you want a database that's going to automatically import into QuickBooks, and that the donor does, and we're going to talk about it in a minute. Okay? But that's the outside of QuickBooks database. That's the lump by category method. Now, many of our clients do not have an outside of QuickBooks database, and in that case, they're going to want to use the individual method. That means they wish to use QuickBooks as a database. Now, if they are going to do that, they're going to need to use the sales forms in QuickBooks, which means they'll need to enter donations either on a sales receipt and membership dues on a sale, all their income on a sales receipt, or if they invoice ahead of time, they'll do an invoice and then receive a payment. So we'll go back in here, and the reason why I want you to have your clients use the sales receipt form, and you can do that in the online edition as well, instead of using the make deposit window, is so you can really make use of all of these sales reports. These sales reports are basically where you go to get reporting for donations, income, and these reports only are going to have information on them if the person used a sales receipt or an invoice, because these are item-based reports, okay? So I'm going to go to a sales by customer summary report, and I just want you to imagine with me for a second that this organization just gets donations. That's their only income. So when I click all, we basically have a list of our donors and how much they've given us. If I change the show columns to by year, then what we have is a history. So we can see that Chad and Marie Brown gave us money every year except this last year. They didn't give us any money at all. Okay, so maybe we need to call them. This report will not increase in value if you use a deposit, because it's an item-based report. Have to use a sales receipt. All right? So this is where I want you to go to enter donations if your client wants to use QuickBooks as a donor database. So Parker and Faith Ashford, and they have a check, and it is individual contribution, and you know how to do this. And we'll just say $1 million. And then we put a class to it. We click Save and Close. And now that $1 million will be on the Sales by Customer Summary Report. There it is right there. All right? So I'm going to stop right now. And the next thing we're going to talk about is the MethodDonor database. But before I do that, let me just go back into our slides here. The thing about using QuickBooks as a database is that it's really difficult to get to get a thank you letter out of the software. There's ways to do it if you have the desktop version. I actually show you how to do that in my training products. If you have QBO, the online edition, it's basically impossible to get a thank you letter out of the software. You really have to have a donor database. Okay? So what would be really cool is if you had a donor database that syncs with QuickBooks real time, and that's what MethodDonor does. I found this software last year at Scaling New Heights. It's by far the best software out there. Now, they didn't have MethodDonor then, they just had Method, but Method is a database program that's been around for a few years now. They came up with MethodDonor, and it's out now, and you can actually sign up for a trial for free, and it is a web-based donor base that syncs with QuickBooks. It is awesome. So what I'm going to do in the last few minutes here is I'm going to display this for you, and then I'm going to show you where you can go to sign up for the trial, and then I'm going to give you an opportunity to get the training products that we have at a massive discount. So let me go ahead and open up a new data file here. MethodDonor will sync not only with your QuickBooks desktop file, but it'll also sync, let me do it this way, it'll also sync with the online edition. It'll do either one. And let's see, here it is right here. So let me open up the data file. So I'm going to open up the data file, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into Method, and I'm going to show you how a person can enter a donation in Method, and it's going to show up in QuickBooks magically, okay? So here we are in QuickBooks, and I think what I'll do is I'll go to the customer list, and I'll click on Delphine Adams. So here's Delphine Adams. If you notice over here, we have 2 donations that we've received that we've entered on sales receipts. So let me go into Method. And Method, you sign in. It's a cloud-based piece of software. It's so easy to use. It has these little blocks here that are icons that looks very much like our phone. And this is where all of the contacts are. This is where the donations are. So if I'm going to click New. So I'm going to enter a donation. So what would happen is your client maybe would be out somewhere and they receive a donation, or perhaps they're at the office but they don't know QuickBooks. You see, one of the things about using QuickBooks as a database is now the person who's entering and dealing with the donations has to be involved in QuickBooks, and that person usually doesn't, you don't want them anywhere near the accounting. This way, they're in this software instead, and they don't have access to QuickBooks, but what they do downloads into QuickBooks. So I'm going to click New. There we go. And you choose a customer, and this is cloud-based. Now, where did it get this customer list? It got it from QuickBooks. When you sign up for this service, and again, it's free for the first month, and then it's actually only $25 a month after that. But it uploads all of the things from QuickBooks into Method that it needs in order to enter a donation in the cloud. Okay? So we'll put the payment method here. This was a check. We'll choose an item here. Oh, we'll put the check number. We'll choose an item here. The item list from QuickBooks uploads into Method. So they'll put, this was an individual contribution. Look at this. You can point it to a class or a program. We'll say that it was unrestricted, so we'll put it to fundraising. Okay. And then we'll make the amount some weird amount. We'll make it, let's see, $324.48. All right. Apparently it didn't like the point. All right. So now if you want to split it between different programs, you can push Add Split, and we can split it. Okay. So I'll say that the donation was a little bit more, and this way I can split it. You can see how churches could split it between different funds. Okay, now it's $424. Okay, so this is very much like entering a sales receipt, and indeed, that's what this form is going to move to. It's going to move to a sales receipt. When you're at the finish, when you're finished with this, you can either just save it, or you can save an email, a thank you letter. So I'm going to go ahead and click Save an Email. So as soon as I do this, QuickBooks is going to be doing a number of things. And let me just go back here and I'll show you all the things that it's going to be doing. It's going to record a donation in Method. It's going to send a thank you letter, which we'll see in a second. It's going to create a record of the thank you letter that it emailed in Method. So the person, the fund development person, can see the email within Method without having to go into their mail to see what was sent. And then it's going to sync and create a sales receipt in QuickBooks. It also notifies the organization, maybe the executive director, that there was a donation, and it sets up a reminder for the ED, whoever you set it to remind, to say, you know, maybe you need to follow up with the donor. Okay? So this is the email. Thank you for your generous donation. Your receipt is available. And then I'll just add something specific. Whoops. Let's see. Give me more. Here we go. All right. And then when you're done, we'll just click Send. Great. So now it's sending the email, and we're going to get an email in a second. Let's go back into here, and you'll see that, I don't know if you noticed this, but there used to be only 8 donations, and now there's 9. I'll go to the contacts, and we'll go to Delphine Adams. This is where all the contacts are. All we have to do is click Adams and do Find here by clicking the little magnifying glass. And there's Delphine. If I click on Delphine, what we're going to get is a record of the donations. So here's donations from Delphine. If I click it, here's the $424. It's all sending an email. Let me go to my email here and see if I've gotten it yet. And whoops. There we go. Here's the email, Synergy Donation Receipt. So I'm going to click it, and I did this because I set me up as the donor. So in terms of their email address, thank you for your generous donation, give me more. So this is happening real time when you're entering the donation. I'll go back into the contacts, and then if I go into activities, and activities is where all the stuff that relates to the donor would appear, and what you'll see is a copy of the email right in that person's account, okay? Now, let's go back into QuickBooks, because this is where the big thing is. If you go into QuickBooks, look at this. The donation has been entered in QuickBooks, and it's in a sales receipt waiting to be deposited. Now, how beautiful is that? I think it's just awesome. All right. So the last thing that I want to say, I think it's important to say this, and then we'll stop, we'll take some questions, and then we'll finish, is that additionally, if you would like, Method has the ability to basically connect to your website. So basically, if your nonprofit has a website that they collect donations through, QuickBooks has the ability to link a web page to that site. You can make the page look the way that you want it. I'll go ahead and click this here. Actually, that's here it is. And the donor, a donor online would, and this is just a generic page, you can customize this. They put in all the information, including their credit card number. They click donate from the site, and then when that happens, it records it, processes the transaction, records a donation within Method, and records a donation in QuickBooks. So basically, what they're trying to solve for, what they're really getting to, is a donor enters a donation and everything is done automatically. The thank you notes get sent, it gets entered in Method, it gets entered in QuickBooks. It's awesome. So let's stop for a second. Actually, while I'm stopping to take questions, if you want to sign up to get a to do a trial of MethodDonor, and I think you should, certainly for you and then certainly for your clients, there's the website that you would go to sign up for it. So you can write that down. You can also download the deck when you're finished. And if you go through that, then basically I'll be notified, and then I'll be able to help you out when you're playing around with this thing and answer any questions that you have. So does anybody have any questions about Method? We'll take like one or two questions.
And Greg,
before we go to questions, I want to clarify a couple of things.
I'm launching the CP poll.
Well, let me finish. If you're going to go ahead and finish this out, let me do this one thing.
We have the CPA poll up right now.
Okay.
No, we don't have to finish it, Greg. We'll just wait for the CPE keyword to be done.
Okay.
Some people have to leave after the hour, but after the CPE, you can keep going. So we're probably going to run 5 to 10 minutes late for Greg to completely finish. A couple of important things. A lot of people are asking about the slides. I'm going to put the slides together because I got to put my slides and Greg's slides into one, and I'm going to email it to everybody together with the recording of the webinar. The link for the QB, for the method donor, a lot of people said the link went too fast. Don't worry about it. I put it in the chat window, and I'm also going to email you that link, so you're not going to miss anything out. All the resources of the slides and the links, they're going to be included on the email with the recording. And there's a lot of questions, so I'm going to shut up and let David.
Well, let me do this. Let me say one thing before you go. Now, I'll stay to answer questions, but what I want you to know is, if you are interested, if you feel like you can learn from me, and you have clients that are nonprofits, QuickBooks Made Easy, the set, it's a training product. It's DVDs that come with handbooks. We sell thousands of them all over the country. They are typically $400 for the set, and we never, ever, ever sell it like this, but I'm dropping the price for $199, and it's only for you guys that went to this webinar. And I've got the slide up on the screen now. I'm hoping you can see it. And if you are interested, you have 48 hours, okay, to buy this training product. Together, it's about 12 hours of learning. It's going to give you everything you need about using QuickBooks for nonprofits. You can share it with your clients. I don't have a problem with that. The code is, you go to QuickBooksMadeEasy.com to sign up for it, QuickBooksMadeEasy.com, and the code is that PRHR 200. So it's kind of like Power Hour 200, but it's abbreviated. So that code is going to work until Saturday at 11:59 p.m. So you've got and that'll be on the West Coast time. So you've got 2 days to get $200 off the product. You order the product online by going to QuickBooksMadeEasy.com. So I'm going to leave this up, and then is there anything else you guys want to say before I start answering questions? Are y'all good?
I'm good.
Okay, all right. All right, so go ahead. David, are you still there?
I am here.
Okay, who has questions? And I'll answer questions for another 5-10 minutes. What do we got?
Okay. I had a question from Edna, and it was one that she's asked a few times, and it was regarding the classes for nonprofits, including churches. Would you use the same process?
No, classes, you would not use classes to track your committees for a church. You want to use classes to track funds. Churches have funds like the mission fund and the building fund, and they want to know the balance of the fund at any given point in time. You use classes to track your funds. There's a whole chapter on it in the Beyond the Essentials training product. What's the next question?
How do you account for non-cash donations, sales receipts?
I use a journal entry. Non-cash donations or in-kind contributions. There's 2 methods. The main one most people use is a journal entry. Takes me about 30 minutes to teach the whole thing from beginning to end. Again, that's in the Beyond the Essentials training product, but I use a journal entry. What's the next topic? Question.
You have been using QB Account in 2015. Does everything you present also work with using the Premier Nonprofit Edition?
Yes, I use the Accountants Edition. Anything that I teach works regardless of what edition you have, including QBO. Your clients do not need to have the Nonprofit Edition to get what they need. Next question.
Restricted funds, how do you set those up and enter to QB?
You're going to, again, now that's another topic. It takes about 25 minutes to teach. It's in the Essentials training product. And you're going to use the customer job field for that. So you enter the grant. Each grant needs to be its own name. So if you get 2 grants from the same funder, they have to be 2 names in QuickBooks. I usually will have the name of the grantor as a customer, and then I'll have each grant as a job, and then you point expenses to it, and then you run a P&L by job and filter for an individual grant to see how the dollars were spent. You can also enter a budget for a restricted grant. I teach you that too, and then you can compare. And by the way, that's where you get your temporarily restricted net asset number for the audit. I'll show you how to do that in the training. Next question.
How do you get the correct fund balance?
Well, again, you have to build a custom summary report to get the fund balance, and that's part of the chapter in tracking funds. It takes me, again, about 25 minutes to teach tracking funds. It's in Beyond the Essentials. But I create a custom summary report where classes are the rows, but there's more to it than that because you have to put in the opening fund balances, and I use a journal entry for that. What's next?
Well, someone asked, how can I understand more about classes, items, and jobs? And I guess that it would be the training material.
Yeah, because again, this is only, an hour-long webinar, so that's about 12 hours of learning what you're looking at on the screen right now. Next topic, question.
If a church member makes regular payments, is it possible to send an annual thank you rather than each contribution?
You can send an annual thank you at the end of the year. You can do it out of QuickBooks Desktop. You can also do it in the online edition. I'll show you how to do it. Again, it's in the Essentials training product. But basically, you run a sales by customer detail report, and you customize it and put a page break after each major grouping in order to get a separate page. I can't get it within the body of a letter, though. It's like a generic letter, thank you for your donations, and they're attached, and then you have a separate page, which is the sales by customer detail report filtered and customized. What's the next question?
Well, Jay has a comment. He wants you to teach the contractors one on a future Power Hour.
Oh, well, thank you. Does anybody have a swollen uvula?
There was a few people with a swollen uvula. They felt your pain.
Oh, good.
It's no joke. So you have others out there with you that support you, Greg.
Okay, good. All right, good. Anything else?
Greg, I have a question. Somebody was asking if the coupon code also works for your construction materials.
No,
for the
no,
construction?
the coupon code only works for the nonprofit thing. If you're interested in getting the construction product, call the 800 number and see what we can do to get you a discount.
Okay.
Same goes if you need to get products for your clients. You can
Now,
call the 800 number.
I will tell you something else, those of you that are still on the call. When you go to sign out, when you buy this thing, you go to QuickBooksMadeEasy.com, a pop-up is going to come up, and if you add $100 to it, you will have a tech support agreement with me, and you can call me for an entire year for free. It's just $100 per year, and I can dial into your software. I can help you with your client work. I know that sounds like, are you kidding me, for an extra $100? But that's really honestly what's going to happen when you pop that up, and you'll be able to get have access to me for a year for just $100. Anybody else before
Greg,
we get going?
Question. Yeah, we have a kind of a loaded question. Throughout this entire presentation, people were, almost every good point you made will say, well, does it work the same way in QuickBooks Online? How would you do that in QuickBooks Online? And can you make an overt statement about everything you've done being the same in QuickBooks Online?
Yes, okay. Everything that I've done, you can do in QuickBooks Online. So I entered a sales receipt in desktop. You would do a sales receipt in QuickBooks Online. Okay? It works the same way. And Method also syncs with QuickBooks Online, so it'll work the same way. In terms of entering transactions or setting up accounts, you would do it the same in QuickBooks Online as you would the desktop. So, and as a matter of fact, when you purchase these products, you can tell us that you want them in the online edition. So if you have a nonprofit in the online edition, we have the QuickBooks Made Easy, the Essentials, specifically for online edition folks, because the screens look a little different. But yeah, everything, there's not anything that I've taught that doesn't work in the online edition.
And Greg, does Method work for Canadian QuickBooks, both online and desktop? I believe it does.
It does. It does. Version 2007 and later, I think, is what it is. Yes, it works for the online edition. The only thing that MethodDonor doesn't work for is the Macintosh version.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Greg, there was another question. This question may be for Method, about being able to accept donation payments on the website using PayPal.
You can. You can. The goal is to be able to accept donations, have the donations processed using the web page that I showed you, the Method web page. We can do it with PayPal now, and within the next little bit of time, few weeks, you'll be able to use other payment processors as well. But the first one that they decided to get working is PayPal, because that's what a lot of people use in the nonprofit world.
And best way to get in contact with you is to go to QuickBooksMadeEasy.com and call the 800 number. Would you say that?
Yes.
Asking for your contact info.
Yeah, here it is right here. QuickBooksMadeEasy.com, and there's the 800 number below it. All right? And again, that's where you would go to sign up to put in the codes to get the price. Again, you've only got 2 days. The other thing is you have a month. You can return it. If you decide
Greg,
later. Yep.
Greg, I'd just like to say that this is just an incredible product that you've created. You are such a fabulous trainer, and the fact that you're selling it to people for $199 to like $200, think about that. That's just 1 or 2 hours with your clients, and how much time is that going to save you in the long run and help you, really concentrate on nonprofits and be an expert in that field. I mean, it just seems like such a no-brainer to order these. I think it's fabulous that you've created them, but you do such a great job of the explanation, and it's so comprehensive, and I appreciate you giving our listeners this huge discount. I think it's a great opportunity.
Well, and for those of you that are still on the call, I don't want you to think this is a big fat sales pitch, so I don't want to turn you off on it. I just really want to help. I really do. I want to be able to continue to help you guys, and it's such a tiny, we only have 50 minutes. It's crazy. So that's why I really wanted to offer you something so you could really get what you need. That's the goal. I don't mean to turn you off or anything like it's a sales pitch. So, obviously I want you to buy the program. I'm an honest guy, But thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate what you said.
And I just want everyone to know how he is here is how he is in his training products too. So you'll be cracking up by yourself in your office. You're going to have your coworkers come in, wonder what's wrong with you because you have tears streaming down your face. He's crazy, no matter how you get him.
You're pushing too much. You don't need to be pushing. Anyway, hopefully my uvula will. The people that have the uvula swollen, it goes away, right? It's only been a couple of days for me. I assume it goes away.
Well, unless you need it removed.
Excuse me?
Someone had theirs removed. They wanted you to know. It's like tonsils. It's okay.
But I don't want my uvula removed. Okay, are we done?
All right, I'm also gonna thank Gregg in Michele's behalf. I know Michele didn't. Let's go ahead and take it home, Gregg. We're gonna send you the list of people that want to sign up to your newsletter, and some of the pending questions that are there. I'm gonna send them to David. So David, if there were any questions left unanswered, maybe you can answer those directly.
Perfect.
We're not gonna have a webinar next week. So we're gonna be 2 weeks from now. We're going to be doing client onboarding and engagement letters. So Michele and I are going to do some research on engagement letters, show you some of the engagement letters that we've used in the past, talk about some of the components of engagement letters that are important, that we feel are important, and we're going to have a special guest, Practice Ignition, which is going to show us how their app manages client onboarding. On 10/29, we're going to do most likely AR management for QuickBooks, but the topic may change. On November 12th. So we're going to switch to 2-week cycles again. Now, the only special event that we're going to have is going to be a different time frame, which is live from Las Vegas at 3:30 p.m. on November 19th. And then December 3rd, we'll have another webinar. Again, we don't have the topic yet. And top apps we recommend for 2016 to be our last one for the year. So please go into our Facebook group and Michele's LinkedIn group and use that as a place to continue the conversation, ask more questions about the topic, and obviously suggest topics that would be great for you. So I'm done. Thank you for staying a little bit over. Michele, you want to say some last words?
Just thank you, Gregg, for joining us today. I appreciate you taking the time, and David and everybody for helping, and thank you, Hector, and thanks everybody for attending.
Thank you.
Cool. All right, guys. Catch you later.
Thanks. Bye.